This was really not my bill. This was actually a bill that belonged to victims.
A big defeat tonight for supporters pushing for a bill to give crime victims more access to information on juveniles in the criminal justice system. Good evening, I'm Lee Zurich.
And I'm Liz Reyes. The Truth and Transparency bill was hailed as a big move towards giving crime victims and the public an easier path to track arrested juveniles.
But opponents said the bill would have unfairly targeted teens and made it harder to find housing or employment. David Jones has the story.
I'm disappointed rather than concerned, but I figure we'll just have to sign it as the governor next year.
Attorney General Jeff Landry speaking to Fox 8 about the death of a bill he was a major backer of, House Bill 321. Kenner Rep. Debbie Villio wrote the proposed bill. It was also known as the Truth and Transparency Act.
There are a lot of people across the state that are extremely disappointed about the games that were played at the state capitol regarding this bill.
If signed into law, the measure would have forced 5 parishes, Orleans, East Baton Rouge, Caddo, Bossier, and Lafayette, to establish what's known as public-facing dashboards. They would provide information on teens accused of violent crimes. Opponents slammed the bill for putting out information for teens who may not have had their day in court. They feared it would also unfairly impact guilty juveniles once they're released.
This is information that someone could look up, and even though this information is about someone who has not even been convicted of a crime, but has just only been accused of a crime, that still can present challenges for them as they try to exist in their community, just to see that.
Landry says he doesn't see the bill changing much if it's reintroduced in the future. However, the session ends Thursday. Supporters of the bill say it failed when Orleans Clerk of Criminal Court Darren Lombard told the legislature it would cost $90,000 to implement in Orleans alone. But Landry disputes that cost.
We'll find the money if that's what it is. I just don't believe that the fiscal note that was attached was real. And so, again, I think it's just more games and it's more disappointment for the people who have been impacted by the widespread violent crime that has inflicted this state.
It's just a shame because it was something that I think was going to help with the juvenile crime problem we have here. And for whatever reason, it didn't go through.
Fox 8 legal analyst Joe Risponti says he felt the transparency legislation on its face was a positive step toward improving the juvenile justice system.
It was a good bill because what it was trying to do is to find out who these kids are that are the recidivists that keep getting back out on the street, and find out who the judges are that are letting them back out on the street to do these same crimes again and again and again. But now we're not going to have that tool.
Landry says in consulting with other parishes, supporters were told implementing the legislation would cost just a few $1,000s. So he says they were taken by surprise when the $90,000 figure came in from New Orleans.